Forever Young and Romantic Warrior put on a show for the ages, and so much more on this episode of the Win Play Show. Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, here with another episode of the Win Play Show where we cover all of the biggest topics in horse racing and handicapping to make sure that you are up to date on the sport that we all love. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost and just notifies you when new videos come onto the network, and we have a lot for you. Listen, we got a first preview of the Fountain of Youth. Kaylee Shapiro and I recap the Kentucky Derby prep races from this past weekend, talking about the Rebel, talking about the Battaglia, talking about the Oaks picture as well. And then, listen, we got race previews coming up later this week for some of those big races, the Gothams, the San Felipe, the Fountain of Youth. We have a lot of great stuff. We also have full card analyses on Capping the Card, other weekly programming as well. So definitely want to press that like and subscribe button today. Well, like I said, welcome to the Win Play Show, where I cover some of the best topics that we have in the sport, both between recapping some of the things that we saw over the previous weekend, talking about some upcoming news, and also covering the latest in the sport and where we are with certain stories, some serious, some not so serious. But want to start this week by talking about the showdown that we saw in Riyadh at the Saudi Cup. And this was quite the showdown between Forever Young and Romantic Warrior. Those were your top two choices on the morning line. Those were your top two choices come time of betting. And I was on record as being completely out on Romantic Warrior, a world-class turf horse, but had never run on the dirt before. I thought Forever Young was clearly the class of that field. When it came to the surface, I thought this was going to be his coming out party. And indeed, it ended up being his coming out party. But I feel like I have to say, I was wrong about Romantic Warrior. Yes, he lost, but what a race he ran. Absolutely incredible race. One of the more thrilling finishes. And I know I went to social media afterwards and I said kind of a once-in-a-lifetime finish. And I think people said, well, there's other great finishes. And indeed there are. I mean, just this past year's Kentucky Derby. I mean, what a great finish that was. What I mean by that is, when was the last time you see the best turf horse go up against one of the best dirt horses and settle it on the track? That's what makes it once in a lifetime for me. It's just the nature of those two specific horses facing off against each other. This great Hong Kong-based turf horse, this great Japanese dirt horse, and the worlds collide in the Saudi Cup. And I have a little bit of the stretch run here, and it was a thrilling stretch run. You see Romantic Warrior there loom 5 wide. A lot of people went to social media afterwards, criticized jockey James McDonald for that ride. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But you see here, Romantic Warrior essentially gets the jump, goes 5 wide, but really gets the jump on Forever Young. And Forever Young, who had been traveling in that lead group, is suddenly a length or two behind. But just as he did last year in the Saudi Derby, he switches out and he just grinds away. And he just keeps going and keeps going and keeps getting faster and eventually gets there at the wire to win the $20 million Saudi Cup and really cement his legacy now as one of the best horses in the world. Has never finished out of the exacta or out of the trifecta, I should say. His only 2 losses were by a head in the Kentucky Derby and a third place finish by basically 2 lengths in the Breeders' Cup Classic. That's it. He's won every other race, 8 wins and 10 starts. Absolutely incredible horse. And, for him to be able to do that on the world's biggest stage in terms of the Saudi Cup and the world's richest race, just what an incredible effort from Forever Young, trainer Yoshito Yahagi. Just all credit to the connections there for getting that horse ready. But Romantic Warrior ran an absolutely huge race. I understand why some people might look at the ride that McDonald gave to for Romantic Warrior and have some questions with it. I don't. Romantic Warrior was on the rail, kind of not quite on the rail, but in a very inside position, sitting behind that lead group of horses that included Forever Young. And I think McDonald realized probably one of 2 things, and maybe both. A, the horse that he was immediately trailing was backing up a little bit. And that can always be a very uncomfortable situation. When the horse that you're traveling behind starts backing up, now this forces you to potentially back up. The other thing is he realized he wasn't going to be able to get the jump on Forever Young if he didn't make a move somehow to get around this group to get ahead of Forever Young. And so he made the decision to go wide. I think there's another reason, which is this is also the first time Romantic Warrior is ever taking kickback. It's possible that he could kind of sense he's not liking this inside trip. I need to get him out in the clear. That's when he's going to make his run. There was the ability for him to get outside very easily. So I think all those things probably led to McDonald making that decision, goes 5 wide. Here's the thing, though. When he's moving 5 wide, he's not asking the horse at all. The horse is just cruising up 5 wide. Watch the hands. When I'm going to play just the beginning of that clip again. Watch the hands of McDonald on the far outside. He's not moving. He's not asking this horse at all. Everybody else is asking their horse except for McDonald and Forever Young's jockey. And so the two, now they're being asked a little bit to go. But this is one of those things where, when he made that initial move, he wasn't asking the horse to go. The horse was moving well within himself, going 5 wide. Now, you might say, well, he gave up the ground, and that's what allowed for Forever Young to be able to track him down at the end. Romantic Warrior traveled a little further distance to get there. Absolutely. But I think criticizing the ride, I think, while I understand it, I don't know if it is. I think some people were a little hyperbolic about that. In particular, Randy Moss, I know of NBC, whose opinion I really respect a lot. But he really came out strong on that ride that McDonald gave. And I think there's reasons for why he gave that ride. And I don't think it was as bad of a ride. And I don't think he used up Romantic Warrior or moved him too soon. I saw some people say he moved him too soon. He got him into a position, but he didn't ask him for something too soon. It's not like he asked him to start making his move around the turn. He just got him into a position. He didn't ask him to make his move until the home stretch. So I don't think he asked the horse too soon by any stretch. It was just an absolutely thrilling race. Forever Young, again, cements that legacy. If you had the opportunity to watch the Saudi Cup coverage too, you probably saw the animated feature that they have in Japan for Forever Young. If you've not watched it, seek it out on social media. I quote tweeted it on my account if you want to go there, at Failed to Menace. But it was one of those things that you just shake your head and you go, man, they just do things right over in Japan, which is, it's this incredibly cool animated feature that kind of blends the Japanese style of animation with the love of horse racing and tells this really great narrative about a horse. And it's something that's accessible to people, that the casual fan can watch and love. I know I sent it to my dad. He thought it was great. And, those are the little things, they make the horses superstars. And here in the United States, we don't do that as much. And part of it is a lot of our horses retire maybe a little too early before they can become superstars. That's one of the reasons why I've been so thrilled that horses like Sierra Leone, like Fierceness, like Locked, like Torpedo Anna are all back at 4 years old. That's how you build superstars in the sport, because there's fans now who can follow these horses that the casual fan got to know them on the Derby Trail, the Oaks Trail, and now you can actually follow them for another year. So again, great race. All credit to Forever Young and the connections there with Yoshida Yahagi. The Dubai World Cup is next. And the really cool part is 4 of the top 5 finishers from the Saudi Cup are going to the Dubai World Cup. So it is going to be Forever Young. It is going to be Ushba Tesoro. Shout out to Ushba and my dad who loves Ushba. But Ushba gets 3rd in that race. And Wilson Tesoro, who I thought ran a pretty good race, also finished 4th. And then Rattle and Roll, who finished 5th for Kenny McPeak in the United States, also going to be going to the Dubai World Cup. So a lot of familiar faces, could be some new shooters. We'll have to wait and see. One horse that we know is going to be over there for the Golden Shaheen, the sprint, is Nutella Fella. That's going to be a lot of fun. Gary Contessa just announced that the other day, that Nutella Fella going over to the Dubai World Cup Carnival and will be taking place in the Dubai Golden Shaheen. So a lot of some more maybe American interests over there for the Dubai World Cup. I know that I saw some comments that people were, kind of curious why there weren't more U.S. interests running in the Saudi Cup. Here's the thing, though. In a lot of ways, as North American racing fans, we should be happy about that, because by them foregoing running in Saudi and Dubai, it means a lot of great American horses are staying here, training here, running here, and that's what we usually want. And they probably are going to have a more full calendar of racing, because they're not going to be coming back from a 2-3 month layoff, having last run overseas. So I actually think this sets up a lot better for our racing calendar and some of the big races that we have. I know, we got the big cap coming up at Santa Anita, and that looks like it's going to be a showdown between Locked and Hit Show. And again, this is exciting. Hit Show's turned into a nice little horse too. So again, as a racing fan, you want to see the best horses run as much as they can. And that's all you can ask for as a fan. And we're getting a lot more of that now because they are running here in the United States, and they're staying here in the United States instead of going overseas and then coming back and taking a long layoff and things along those lines. So, yeah, very exciting stuff over in Riyadh this past weekend. Now, some news taking place here in the United States. First, as it pertains to the Kentucky Derby Trail, news just breaking on Tuesday morning that First Resort for Owen Hardy, that horse is off the Kentucky Derby Trail. Stress fracture in the one leg, and Hardy had scratched that horse from the John Battaglia, where the horse was the 2-1 favorite. Remember, this is the horse that beat Jonathan's Way in the Jockey Club, Kentucky Jockey Club back in November at Churchill Downs, and was going a mile and a 16th over that Churchill Downs surface, which a lot of people like to use that race as a little bit of an indicator. Hey, the horse can do 2 turns. The horse likes the track at Churchill. These are good indicators that, hey, maybe this is a Derby horse. We've seen that transition from the synthetic to the dirt be an effective one. So even the fact he was prepping at the Battaglia, was kind of an intriguing thing. But sadly, that horse is off the trail. So that's 2 horses in the last 2 weeks that we've seen. Magnitude now, after that Risen Star being scratched off the Triple Crown Trail, and now also First Resort off the Triple Crown Trail as well. If you want to hear more about our thoughts on the Kentucky Derby prep races from this past weekend, check out the most recent episode of The Road to the Kentucky Derby in Kentucky Oaks with myself and Kaylee Shapiro. We recap all those races this weekend: the Rebel, the Honeybee, the Battaglia, the Cincinnati Trophy. We even talk about the UAE Oaks, which was run this past weekend. That was won by a horse that debuted sprinting on the turf in Norway. That's right. Queen Azteca starts sprinting on turf in Norway, then freaks when she's put on the dirt in Sweden before going and winning the UAE Oaks. And now this horse that was a $22,000 sale at Keeneland is potentially going back to Kentucky and is going to go back as an entrant in the Kentucky Oaks. It's a really cool story. Very, very cool story. And there's a lot of really cool storylines. This weekend, for instance, in the Busher, you have Volleyball Princess running in that race. She's a North Carolina bred, one of only 4 North Carolina breds for the entire crop that she was born into. And she's running with a chance to potentially get into the Kentucky Oaks. Just a lot of really cool stories. And the fact that Gotham is led by 3 New York breds: Calling Card, Sand Devil, Sacrosanct, all very good horses, all New York bred. So a lot of fun stuff, a lot of great storylines. That's what I love this time of year. Now, one of the best storylines that we have in the sport is Cole Battle, who, of course, won the Arkansas Derby this past weekend, beating Matticat Road, beating Sandman. That horse is incredibly frustrating and infuriating. But nevertheless, Lonnie Briley, Juan Vargas, lesser connections. Lonnie Briley, his only 2 victories at Oaklawn this year have been the Southwest and then the Rebel. Those are two pretty good races to win with the same horse, with Cole Battle, who, of course, very modest. Cole Front is, standing for $2,000. And, this was a horse that was purchased at the Texas Select Sale, if I'm not mistaken, for $70. And, Cole Battle it was a beautiful ride. And I know immediately after the race, when Lonnie was interviewed, he said, "We're going to the Arkansas Derby." The next day, he talks to Andy Biancone. Well, kind of some things changed. Well, we're going to see what the horse says. And we might go just straight to the Kentucky Derby, because with the 50 points, in addition to what he earned in the Smarty Jones, he's in the starting gate of the Kentucky Derby. Cole Battle is there. And so I think Lonnie is probably going to see how the horse reacts, which is what you should always do. You should always let the horse tell you what your next step is. You shouldn't predetermine these things. But we'll see. If the horse doesn't bounce back, or maybe just needs a little bit of time off, and if it's a little too much, maybe for the horse to run that big of a race, back to back. Horse earned a 91 buyer speed figure, certainly a nice increase from his 84 in the previous race, but it does probably fall a little short from that upper level number that you probably need to see from the top competitors. So we'll see. I remember a couple years ago, Kent DeSormo did this with Confidence Game, or Keith Desormeaux did this with Confidence Game after winning the Rebel. And Desormeaux decided skipping the Arkansas Derby, going straight to the Kentucky Derby. That didn't really work out for Confidence Game. So I sometimes am worried about that really long layoff and whether a horse can fire off the long layoff. That said, the horse did go almost 2 months between that Smarty Jones and the Rebel and ran a huge race. So Lonnie knows what this horse needs and clearly knows what this horse is able to do and how this horse reacts to those types of things. So it'll be interesting to see that, because the Arkansas Derby is shaping up to be a pretty interesting race, because you imagine that there's going to be a Bob. Maybe Matticat Road comes back. Maybe he ships one of his other ones out there. Maybe he ships a horse like Rodriguez. Maybe he ships a horse like Romanesque. It seems unlikely that he would ship Barnes. Maybe Citizen Bull. But, how many of these monsters does he want to put up against each other in the Santa Anita Derby? That's the question. And so do you want to be out potentially and take one of your horses out to Arkansas, maybe even two out to Arkansas for the Arkansas Derby? So those might be there. And then the horse that debuted on the undercard of the Rebel, Cornucopian, earns a 101 Beyer speed figure in debut, going 6 for Bob Baffert with Irad Ortiz Jr. up. The horse pulled away late and was hitting his best stride late in that race. Looks certainly like a big time horse. $1.1 million sale, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of expectations there with Cornucopian. And listen, I was being a little over the top I went to social media and posted a poll. I said, did we just see the winner of the Arkansas Derby, run on the undercard of the Rebel? Because people always like to make these sort of grandiose statements, and I think they're rather ridiculous. And so I was kind of tongue in cheek. People took that seriously. But it was interesting to see. A lot of people go, yeah, this is the horse. This is a horse that could potentially do it. But, we'll see. I mean, it just, the number of Baffert horses is just so interesting. I was talking to Kaylee Shapiro about this off camera the other day after we had done recording our most recent episode. And she goes, and she was talking about Sovereignty and how much she likes Sovereignty for Bill Mott. And a lot of people do. I know Acacia Clement really likes that horse. Paul LaDuca really likes that horse. I really like that horse. A lot of people like Sovereignty. That's not a new idea. That horse is running this weekend in the Fountain of Youth. But I said, listen, I go, that's Bill Mott's only Derby horse. I go, he's putting all of his eggs in the basket of Sovereignty to win this year. I go, Bob's got a half dozen baskets. He's got Citizen Bull, and he's got Barnes, and he's got Romanesque, and he's got Rodriguez, and he's got Getaway Car, and he's got Matticat Road, and now he's got Cornucopian. These are all really legit horses, and Bob does not ship a horse halfway across the country for no reason. Listen, he did this with Barnes in debut. There was no reason for him to ship Barnes. Out of all the horses he could have shipped, coming off of a 3+ year suspension to Churchill Downs, he chose Barnes as the horse. I'm shipping this horse out to debut in a maiden special weight race, going 5 at Churchill. I mean, Bob rarely runs his horses at that short, especially when they're that age. And yet that's what he does. That was clearly a message of, I'm going to be back with this horse in May. And I want to get this horse travel, and I want to get this horse experience over the Churchill Downs dirt. And that's exactly what Barnes did. And now we're going to see if Barnes can fulfill my high opinion of him. I have him ranked as my number 1 Derby contender, despite the fact he earned a grand total of 0 points, I believe. And maybe the San Vicente was a small prep. He might have a very small number of points for that. But bottom line, he's nowhere near the starting gate of the Kentucky Derby. I'll tell you that much. And yet he's going to run this weekend in the San Felipe against a horse like Journalism, who I think is a monster of a horse as well. I like that horse quite a bit. So that I'm so excited to watch that San Felipe. I know it's a short field, but you give me those two horses running against each other with Rodriguez mixed in, that's an interesting race. That's a really interesting race. So can't wait to see that. And again, so Bob ships Cornucopian to Oaklawn. Now, on one hand, you go, well, maybe Matticat Road just wanted a travel buddy. Maybe. But the fact that this was a $1.1 million purchase and we're debuting this horse on the undercard of the Rebel at Oaklawn, come on. I mean, they're pretty clear that there's high expectations with this horse. So we'll see. It doesn't mean they're going to fulfill all those expectations, but it does mean he's got a lot of bullets, that he can fire. And when you have 6 or 7 Derby contenders, and one of the interesting things is I mentioned Mott, not really having, just having sovereignty. You look at Chad Brown. He's got Chancer. That's kind of his shot, is Chancer McPatrick. You look at Todd Pletcher. Todd's got River Thames. By the way, shout out to the person in the comments who said, stop saying River Thames, Matthew. It's River Thames. And you're absolutely right. It is River Thames. So River Thames. And, you got Tip Top Thomas, but he still has yet to come back in 2025. So, there's some questions there with regards to, what's Todd have necessarily in this group. Asmussen's got a couple, but nothing that really is popping yet. Magnitude was his best, and that horse is off the Derby trail now. So, yeah, it's interesting to see. Some of the big name trainers don't have as many shooters, and even Brad Cox. And Brad Cox has got a lot of really good fillies. I mean, Muhima, even though she finished third, that's a good filly. Immersive obviously is to the bench, but it was your champion 2-year-old. And then Good Cheer is now the one kind of carrying the flag. Eclatant, unlikely to stretch out, who won the Forward Gal down at Gulfstream Park. But nevertheless, even Cox, you look at the horses he's got on the boys' side, they've not really fired. I mean, you got John Hancock, who won the Sam F. Davis. That has traditionally not been a particularly predictive prep race. And then you have Disco Time, who won that Lecomte, which I do think is coming back as a really strong race, but has, it had a little bit of time off, had a little bit of an issue, and now it looks like it's going to just run in that final round of preps. Louisiana Derby or the Bluegrass is kind of the plan there. So, even that horse is really cutting it close. So it's interesting to see that some of the big name trainers don't have as many horses as you might imagine. And so, hey, son of a gun, here's Lonnie Briley with Cole Battle. Here's Linda Rice maybe with Sand Devil up in New York. There's some interesting alternatives, that some other stories that could emerge in terms of, trainers. You got Ian Wilkes with a horse like Burnham Square down in Florida, who's running in the Fountain of Youth this weekend. That's really exciting. So going to be fun to see how this all continues to shape out. Now, we also have a couple of big news with horses coming back, some older horses. Mindframe is returning this weekend in the Gulfstream Park Mile on that Fountain of Youth Day undercard, so definitely want to check that out. And then the news that I know I've been waiting for, and my colleagues have been waiting for, is Next. Oh, Next. We love Next up here in New York. The great dirt marathoner, the great dirt stayer, is back in training. And so we are so thrilled after that really horrendous Breeders' Cup Classic. Listen, they took their shot. They ran their race. I was thrilled that they did. It was great to see him take a shot, but it's also great to see that he's back training, feeling healthy, going to be running in those dirt marathons this year, probably going to be winning by 15 lengths because that's just what he does. He's just an incredible horse. And if you like watching domination of a particular division, that's what he does. And nobody dominates their division the way Next does in his division. So really, like I said, happy to see that he's back. Now, listen, not all the news has been good. My home state of Pennsylvania, some stories broke this week that really pained me. The Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, HISA, as well as the Horse Racing Integrity and Welfare Unit, HIWU, in collaboration with the Pennsylvania State Horse Racing Commission, announced that they were pursuing a case against one veterinarian, 13 Pennsylvania-based trainers in connection to an organized effort to evade rules based upon intra-articular injections of the joints of covered horses within prohibited stand-bound periods. The veterinarian in question is Dr. Alan Post-Bonnell, conspired with up to 13 trainers that have all been implicated from May 2023 to November 2024 about administering these injections to the joints of covered horses, which is, of course, prohibited. And so this has been a massive investigation that has led to the disqualification of more than 100 horses and subsequent forfeiture of purses during that period as well. So it is just an incredibly wide-ranging, a wide-ranging investigation. The more damning part of this, and the part that really irks me, is that 30% of the more than 100 unique horses that have alleged to have been injected with the intra-articular injection never raced again. So 30% never raced again, which, again, correlation doesn't equal causation, but it would certainly suggest that the injections were used to mask pain. And that is highly distressing. That is news that I hate hearing because there are so many good people in the sport. There are so many, the vast majority of the people in the sport are doing it for the welfare of these animals. And to see people skirting these types of rules is just horrendous. And I just, that is the sort of story that makes your stomach turn a little bit. The good news, if there is good news from this, is that HISA was able to investigate this and is now going to lead to some pretty significant disciplinary action, I would imagine, on the vet as well as the 13 implicated trainers. So this was a wide-ranging investigation. I think it's a good thing that it shows that HISA can regulate and crack down on this sort of thing when it is happening. And I say that because some of the other stories that have come out and some of the other action that has come out, you go back to the Jorge Navarro stuff and the Jason Service stuff. It was the FBI. It was wiretaps. It was other authorities that were regulating horse racing. We weren't doing it ourselves, or we were doing kind of a mediocre job at it. And so it's promising at least to see that HISA is able to regulate this stuff and has been able to launch and conduct this sort of wide-ranging investigation and now brings this sort of findings to light, holding people accountable for these types of really heinous actions. And so, like I said, it pains me that it's in my home state of Pennsylvania, but we all know there's a lot of things we have to clean up in this sport, and certainly eliminating bad actors is the number one thing we have to do. Because not only do we have to eliminate bad actors from a standpoint of the health care of the horse, which to me is always going to be paramount, but it's also for the health care of the bettors, quite frankly, that when you're having people doing these types of things, as a bettor, all you ask is that there's a level playing field, that everybody's playing by the same set of rules. That's what you want as a bettor, because that way, when you look at the form, you know that everybody's on the up and up and there's no silly business going on. And you don't have to try to read between the lines to go, well, is this horse? No. So it is also an affront to bettors in addition to the horse. So I applaud the actions of HISA. I hope to see more of these types of wide-ranging investigations into malpractice and malfeasance in our sport. And certainly, like I said, the elimination of bad actors not only protects our horses, not only protects the integrity of our sport, but also protects the bettors in our sport as well. And all of those things are necessary for the sport to thrive. Now, I don't want to end on a downer. So I have one final story that I wanted to share to let you know a little bit about me. I grew up in an Italian family in Pennsylvania. My grandfather was an immigrant, came to America the day the stock market crashed in 1929. He was 7 years old at the time and did not speak a word of English. Very traditional American success story. Not only did he learn to speak English, he ultimately went to college and then to law school and practiced law and started a law firm that my father practiced with him for many, many years in my hometown of Reading, Pennsylvania. But our family and our origin is in a little town off the Adriatic coast of Italy called Ascoli Piceno. And in particular, from a little hill outside of Ascoli, Casa di Ciuccio. But Ascoli Piceno is my hometown of Italy. It is a place that I have visited multiple times. I've stood in the square. I have visited the shops. I've eaten in the restaurants. I've visited my cousins, Raffaella and Paolo, and all of the wonderful people. My uncle Fernando lived over there. And I bring all of this up to say that there was no more exciting moment for me this past weekend than when a Japanese horse named Ascoli Piceno won the 1351 turf sprint in Riyadh for $2 million. And I just was absolutely delighted. And I could not have been more thrilled for this Japanese horse named after a small town in Italy to win a $2 million race in Saudi Arabia and make some little kid from Reading, Pennsylvania very happy as a result of it. And so that was my best story of the week. I just was beaming all day Saturday, not only because I was right about Forever Young, but I was also beaming because of Ascoli Piceno. And so shout out to my late Uncle Fernando, who just passed away last year, my cousin Raffaella, my cousin Paolo, who are still over there. They now live in Ancona, which is not too far away, but Ascoli is my hometown. And to see my hometown name being called out on a huge stage in our sport for a horse that I was aware of this horse before that Saturday. I'd known about Ascoli Piceno as a horse, and but it was just such a thrilling moment and a really cool moment. So wanted to end on a high note there. Listen, thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate it. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now Post time.